There's a moment, just before the panic rises, before the body tightens, before the breath cuts short, where we meet the edge of ourselves. A tremor in the chest, a clench in the gut, the subtle vibration of fear arriving, not as an enemy, but as a messenger. Most of us flinch here. We freeze, we grip, we distract, because we were taught that fear means something's gone wrong, that it's a sign to run, to hide, to stop moving forward. But what if fear isn't the stop sign? What if it's the doorway? What if fear isn't something to avoid, but something to alchemize? You see, the nervous system isn't wrong for contracting. It's ancient. It's wise. It's just trying to protect you with the only patterns it's ever known. But protection is not the same as presence. And safety isn't the absence of fear. It's the capacity to stay open within it. When fear arrives, it doesn't ask for your analysis. It doesn't need a solution. It asks for your softness, your breath, your attention. That sacred pause where you choose not to abandon yourself. Because it's not the fear that blocks the flow. It's the resistance to it. It's the story that says, this shouldn't be happening. It's the clenched jaw, the racing thoughts, the quiet war inside your chest. But the quantum field doesn't respond to your mask. It responds to your frequency. And fear, when met with coherence, becomes fuel. It sharpens your awareness. It activates your potential. It stretches the edges of who you thought you were. So what if we stopped labeling fear as failure? What if we remembered that the body is not broken when it trembles, that the mind is not wrong for feeling unsure? What if those sensations are the precise activation of a new timeline birthing through you? Every fear is a frequency echoing from the subconscious, an old imprint, a frozen fragment, a younger self asking for reintegration, not rejection, not suppression, but embodiment. When you feel it fully, you collapse the loop. You reclaim the signal. You step back into resonance with what you're becoming. Think of the way a wave crashes, loud, wild, unstoppable, and then recedes into calm. That's fear, not a wall, a wave, not a threat, a threshold. It asks, will you meet me, or will you retreat again into the old? Because every time you choose to feel it without freezing, you teach your nervous system a new truth. You build capacity. You build coherence. You become the kind of person who can hold the energy of the life you're calling in. Not because you forced your way there, but because you felt your way there. That's embodiment. That's alignment. That's where transformation lives. It's strange, isn't it? How something as invisible as fear can shape entire lifetimes. How a single moment of contraction, a no in the chest, a pause in the breath, can redirect our entire path without us even realizing. We think we're making logical decisions, but underneath the logic lives the nervous system, and underneath the nervous system lives memory, sensory, emotional, cellular memory, not just of what happened to us, but of what it meant, of what we made it mean. And fear, more often than not, is not about what's happening. It's about what's associated with what's happening. A raised voice that echoes a parent's anger, an opportunity that reminds the body of a time it failed, an expansion that feels unfamiliar and therefore unsafe. So we say, I'm not ready. It's not the right time. Maybe later. But the truth is, it's not the situation. It's the signal inside us. And if we don't become conscious of that, we keep obeying fear as if it were truth. But fear isn't truth. Fear is a threshold. And thresholds are meant to be crossed, not with force, but with presence. The body doesn't need to be pushed. It needs to be reintroduced to safety, because you can't shift what you won't feel, and you can't embody what you won't allow. Fear invites us into the deepest practice of all, staying. Not staying in the story, but staying with the sensation. That tightness in the throat? Stay. That jitter in your hands? Stay. That heat in your chest? Stay. Let it rise. Let it move. Let it breathe through you without attaching a name to it. And in that space, something alchemical happens. The energy begins to circulate again. The freeze begins to thaw. The signal changes shape. Imagine you're standing at the edge of something you've prayed for, a new relationship, a creative leap, a version of you that feels more free, more expressed, more real. And just as you're about to step forward, your whole system says, no, not because it doesn't want it, but because it doesn't recognize it. The familiar, however painful, is what the nervous system knows how to predict. And what it can predict, it calls safe. So when you begin to choose a different path, fear arises, not as sabotage, but as signal. It's your body asking, is it safe to expand now? And your job is not to override that voice. Your job is to attune to it, to hold it, to breathe into it, to co-regulate your inner world until the signal says yes. Because the quantum field doesn't need you to be fearless. It needs you to be present. It needs you to be honest. It needs you to be in coherence with your becoming, not in battle with your protection. When you make fear wrong, you divide yourself. But when you make it sacred, you unify, you soften, you integrate. You become the kind of being who doesn't chase safety externally, but who is safety internally. And from that inner safety, your frequency stabilizes, your field organizes, your manifestations accelerate, not because you pushed past your fear, but because you walked with it, breathed with it, danced with it. Fear, in its purest form, is just energy, a high-voltage signal passing through your system, asking to be grounded, transmuted, loved. And when you stop resisting that energy, when you feel it without freezing, you become the alchemist, not by escaping it, but by becoming large enough to hold it. And in that expansion, the old identity starts to dissolve. The version of you that only knew how to cope begins to remember how to create. You remember you are not the fear. You are the one witnessing it, and the one who can choose a new response. That's power. Not the power of control, but the power of coherence. The power of being fully here, even when it trembles, even when it aches, even when it floods your system like a storm. You stay, you feel, you breathe, and in doing so, you rise. There's a subtle, sacred moment that happens when you stop trying to escape the fear and start listening to it. Not with your mind, but with your body. A moment where you realize the trembling isn't weakness, the pounding heart isn't wrong, the tightness isn't a sign to shut down. It's a signal of a system stretching, rewiring, expanding. The old paradigm told us that mastery means fearlessness, that to be strong is to be unaffected. But true mastery is intimacy. True strength is presence. And presence doesn't mean the fear disappears. It means you're anchored enough to feel it without becoming it. When I sit with my own fear, it often arrives as a ripple, first in the solar plexus, then the throat. Sometimes it's like heat, sometimes like static, and I used to think I had to fix it, to breathe it away, to think my way out. But now I know better. Now I soften. I let the fear be here. I let it speak in its own language, through sensation, not words. And in that space, I remember. It's not fear that blocks flow, it's judgment. It's the mind rushing in to label what the body is simply trying to release. We forget how intelligent we are, how the body already knows what to do when we stop interrupting the process with stories, when we stop bracing, stop clenching, stop trying to get over it and instead drop into it. You see, there's a rhythm to emotion, just like the tide, just like breath. Fear, too, has a rhythm, a pulse, a wave, and your job is not to interrupt it, but to allow it to complete. Every time you freeze, you pause that wave mid-motion. You lock it in the body. You store it in the tissue. But when you feel it all the way through, when you stay with it without needing to control it, it moves, it completes, it dissolves. This is why we don't manifest through strategy alone. We manifest through signal. And your clearest signal comes not from avoidance, but from aliveness, a regulated body, a coherent heart, a nervous system that knows how to return to center even when fear surges through. Think about how a child cries, how the body shakes, how the breath heaves, how they let the wave run all the way through. They don't hold back. They don't analyze. And once it's done, they return to joy. They return to play. That's what our bodies long for. Completion, not avoidance, not bypass, but movement, integration, safety inside the storm. And when we begin to relate to fear this way, something miraculous happens. We stop fearing fear itself. We stop building lives designed to avoid discomfort, and we begin creating from truth, from resonance, from wholeness. So many people are trying to quantum leap into a life they haven't built the inner safety to hold. trying to jump timelines without anchoring the nervous system into the new reality. But energy doesn't lie. If your body still associates expansion with danger, your frequency will reflect that. Your field will mirror that. Not as punishment, but as precision. The universe only matches the signal you're broadcasting. Not what you say, not what you wish, but what your body believes is safe to receive. So the question isn't, how do I get what I want? The question is, can I become the version of me for whom this is normal, familiar, regulated, not just in thought, but in physiology, in tone, in breath, in presence? Fear shows you where your system is still orienting to the past, where you've mistaken survival for identity. But when you meet it with reverence, when you slow down enough to listen, you reclaim your power. You show your body, we are safe now. It's okay to soften. And from that softness, new timelines open. You feel your shoulders drop, your breath deepen, your vision clear. And in that moment, subtle, quiet, profound, you realize the fear didn't leave, but you stopped needing it to. You became larger than it. You became available for a life beyond it. I remember a moment, barefoot on my kitchen floor, a wave of dread rising out of nowhere. Nothing had happened. No crisis, no threat. Just a sudden tightening in my belly, a familiar hum of anxiety. Old fear, resurfacing. For a second, I reached for distraction. My phone, the fridge, anything to avoid feeling. But I caught myself. I stopped, closed my eyes, let the fear have space. And something powerful unfolded. Not dramatic, not loud, but real. I felt my breath shift. I felt the signal soften. And I realized it wasn't fear that was overwhelming me. It was my resistance to it. You see, we've been trained to fear the sensation of fear, to brace against it, to override it. But the body doesn't need overriding. It needs remembering. Because fear, when allowed to move, becomes clarity. It sharpens our awareness. Not to warn us away from life, but to guide us more deeply into presence. And yet we treat it like an enemy. We exile it from our spiritual practice. We try to affirm it away, breathe it away, control it into stillness. But embodiment isn't about elimination. It's about integration. Fear doesn't need to disappear for you to manifest your vision. It simply needs to be metabolized, felt, flowed through, honored. Think about how trees bend in the wind, how they don't resist the storm, but move with it. That's your body. That's your energy. When fear comes, your job isn't to stiffen, it's to sway, to move with the current, to let the sensation rise and fall like breath. And in that movement, the field responds, not to your perfection, but to your presence. Because frequency doesn't flow through frozen states. It flows through coherence, through fluidity, through surrender. And surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in to the moment fully, trusting that your body knows how to process even this. Imagine if every time fear arose, you treated it like a sacred guest, sat with it, breathed with it, asked it what it was here to show you. That's not weakness, that's mastery. Because true energetic mastery isn't being fearless. It's being so anchored in your center that no wave can pull you under. You become the space that holds the fear, not the fear itself. And from that space, your frequency stabilizes. You become magnetic not through effort, but through essence. Not by forcing clarity, but by allowing truth to rise from the stillness inside. I've watched people try to manifest from a place of internal war, saying all the right words, taking all the right steps, but underneath, the body is braced, the breath is shallow, the signal is incoherent, and so the field delays, not to punish, but to protect. Because what we're calling in isn't just a thing, it's a state, a reality, and realities require resonance. If you want to manifest a life of peace, joy, expansion, your body must become a safe space for those frequencies to land. That means doing the inner work, not just in mindset, but in nervous system, in energy, in presence. So I ask you, where in your life are you still freezing? Where are you still holding your breath? Where are you shrinking instead of softening? These are the portals. These are the places that hold your next timeline, not in some far-off future, but right here, in the trembling, in the tightness, in the sacred opportunity to feel without fleeing. That is the embodiment of quantum flow, not linear progress, but nonlinear presence. The willingness to meet what is, fully, vulnerably, without condition. And the paradox? When you do that, when you feel the fear all the way through without becoming it, you become free, not because the fear is gone, but because it no longer owns you. You've reclaimed your seat, you've regulated your signal, and from that place, manifestation isn't just possible, it's inevitable, not because you chased it, but because you became it. There's something profoundly liberating that happens when we stop treating fear as an interruption to our path and begin seeing it as part of the path itself. It's easy to trust the process when things feel open, when energy is flowing, when the signs are aligning. But the real mastery, the kind that changes timelines, is forged in the moments when your chest tightens, your breath shortens, and every cell in your body whispers, "Not this." In those moments, your relationship with fear is revealed. Do you fight it? Do you run? Or do you lean in, just enough to let the signal shift? Because every moment of fear is a choice point, not just a psychological one, but an energetic one. It's where you either reinforce the old identity or dissolve it. It's where the vibrational signature of your past collides with the signal of who you're becoming. And the question becomes, which frequency do you feed? Most people unknowingly choose the familiar one. They call it realistic. They say, "I'm just being cautious." But what they're really doing is regulating their expansion back down to what's familiar. And familiar doesn't mean safe, it just means known. But if you want a life beyond what you've known, you must become someone who can feel fear without translating it into stop. You must become fluent in the language of the body, its signals, its shifts, its sacred contractions, and learn to hear them as guidance, not warning. Fear is often the final contraction before a breakthrough, the sharp breath before the release, the chaos before the new coherence lands. But if you freeze here, if you abandon yourself, you miss the miracle. Not because you're weak, but because you weren't taught how to stay. So let me offer you a new model, not one of force, but of frequency, not one of avoidance, but of alchemy. The next time fear rises, instead of analyzing, breathe. Instead of tightening, soften. Instead of fleeing, stay. Meet the edge with reverence. Let your body shake if it needs to. Let the tears come. Let the breath be ragged. Not forever, just for long enough to prove to your system that this expansion is survivable. That this version of you, the one who dares, who steps forward, who doesn't wait for fear to vanish, is real, is here, is now. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. And what you are is not just what you believe consciously. It's what your nervous system believes is safe to hold. So each time you regulate in the presence of fear, you send a new signal into the field. You say, "I can hold more. I can receive more. I can stay present even here." And that signal collapses timelines, because coherence is the most magnetic force in the universe. Not perfection, not effort, coherence. And coherence comes not from pretending you don't feel fear, but from integrating it into your wholeness. Think of a musician tuning an instrument. The slightest tension changes the sound. So too with your body. Your tone, emotional, energetic, vibrational matters. You are the instrument. Your frequency is your song. And fear, when met with presence, becomes part of the harmony. It's not noise, it's depth. It gives your manifestation texture, richness, resonance. Because a life built without ever meeting fear is a life lived only halfway, but a life where fear is met, felt, and transmuted. That's a life of real power, not loud power, not performative power, quiet, stable, embodied power. So when fear comes, next week, tomorrow, 5 minutes from now, don't ask, "How do I get rid of this?" Ask, "How can I hold this?" Breathe deeper, root your feet, feel the floor beneath you. Open your heart, even if it trembles. Because the more often you do this, the more your body remembers that it's safe to stay open. And the more open you are, the more energy can move, the more miracles can land. Not from doing more, but from feeling more. Not from control, but from coherence. There's a kind of quiet revolution that happens the moment you stop demanding that fear leave, and instead invite it to speak. A soft rebellion against all the ways you've been conditioned to believe that fear is the enemy, that emotion is a weakness. The trembling means you're failing. But when you sit with it, really sit with it, you realize something radical. Fear is intelligent. It's precise. It's not chaos. It's code. It's the body's language of protection, speaking in vibration, in contraction, in heat. And when you decode it not with logic but with love, it begins to shift. Not instantly, but inevitably. I think of fear like a tuning fork. It rings out wherever your nervous system still holds the imprint of a past pain, a past story, a frozen moment that never got to complete. And when it rings, it's not saying stop. It's saying, here. Here is where you split from yourself. Here is where you left the moment. Here is where you began to believe you weren't safe. Not as punishment, but as invitation. Fear invites you to reintegrate what's been left behind, to close the loop, to come home. This is embodiment. Not the perfect stillness of a curated life, but the fierce tenderness of a life fully felt. Because when fear rises, and you meet it with curiosity instead of control, your whole system begins to rewire. Your breath deepens, your field clears, your signal sharpens, and the universe responds, not with more fear, but with opportunity, with openings, with quantum alignments that arrive not because you forced your way forward, but because you were willing to feel your way through. Not from effort, from essence. You begin to notice the subtle moments, when your shoulders relax, when the grip in your belly unwinds, when you say yes to something even though your voice shakes. And in those moments, something ancient inside you exhales. Something deep remembers, that you were never meant to live in avoidance. That fear was never the cage. It was the call back to your body, back to your breath, back to the truth that you are already whole, already capable, already equipped to hold the magnitude of what you're calling in. So many people are trying to bypass fear, to hack their way into manifestation without feeling the very energies that make them magnetic.
But what if fear is the activation? What if the trembling is the unlocking? Not to be fixed, but to be flowed through. To let the body do what it's always known how to do. Move energy, complete cycles, recalibrate the signal. This is how timelines collapse, not through control, but through coherence. And coherence is born in the moment you choose to stay open when everything in you wants to shut down. Let your tears be holy. Let your shaking be sacred. Let the discomfort be your teacher.
Because what you learn in those moments isn't just how to regulate. You learn who you are. You learn that you are more than the emotion, more than the story, more than the moment. You are the presence within the wave, the witness behind the fear. And that presence, anchored, awake, unwavering, is what changes your life. It's what changes your frequency. It's what tells the universe, I am ready. Not in theory, in truth, in tone, in body. And the universe listens, not just to your words, but to your resonance, to the stability in your field, to the coherence of your nervous system. So stop waiting for fear to vanish before you move. Move with it. Let it walk beside you, like a shadow that no longer holds your name. Because every time you do, every time you feel instead of freeze, you melt another layer of the old. And in that melting, something new emerges. Not just a shift in mindset, but a shift in identity, in embodiment, in reality. This is what it means to live in alignment. Not the absence of fear, but the mastery of presence. Not the denial of contraction, but the fluidity to move through it with grace. Not fearlessness, but fear met with so much tenderness that it has no choice but to transform. There's a moment, after the tears, after the breath returns, after the storm inside softens, when something inside you begins to feel different, quieter, clearer, more still. Not because the world changed, but because your signal did. Because you stayed. You didn't run. You didn't numb. You felt. And in that feeling, you reprogrammed more than your nervous system. You reprogrammed your field. You became safe to yourself. And that's where reality starts to bend. Because when you can feel fear and stay open, you're no longer run by your past. You're no longer ruled by the part of you that only knows survival. You begin to build a new template, a new energetic blueprint. One where expansion doesn't mean danger. One where the unknown becomes possibility instead of panic. This is what it means to live as a quantum being. Not someone who's above fear, but someone who's intimate with it. Someone who understands that fear isn't a problem. It's a portal to the next version of you. Not the polished version, not the one who never shakes, but the real version, the embodied version. The version who can hold complexity and still choose love, who can feel the pulse of fear and still step forward, who can tremble and trust at the same time. Because that's the paradox. The more you allow fear to exist within you, the less power it has over you. It becomes texture, not truth, vibration, not verdict, and something magical begins to unfold. Life meets you in that openness. The field rearranges. People respond to your clarity. Opportunities flow to your coherence, not because you're perfect, but because you're congruent, because your signal says, I can hold what I asked for, not with gritted teeth, but with a grounded heart, not by proving, but by remembering that you don't manifest from the surface, you manifest from the root, from the breath, from the parts of you willing to feel everything and still stay. The body becomes a tuning fork, your chest, your gut, your throat, all become instruments of perception, and fear. It becomes a kind of sacred compass, pointing you toward the places that still need love, still need integration, still need you, because fear always rises at the edge of your evolution, just before the leap, just before the shift. And if you can stay regulated there, if you can stay awake there, you quantum leap not by skipping steps, but by collapsing resistance. This is the path of embodiment, of energetic maturity. It's not linear. It's not always graceful, but it's real. It's honest. It's the kind of growth that lasts because it's woven into your cells, not just your affirmations. And as you walk it, you begin to trust yourself more, not because you don't feel fear, but because you know how to be with it. You trust your own presence, your own capacity, your own ability to meet what arises and still choose alignment, still choose coherence, still choose to be the signal of what you're calling in. And when you become that, when you live as the frequency of your future, you no longer chase, you attract, you no longer grasp, you allow, you no longer wait for fear to vanish. You walk with it, hand in hand, as a sacred reminder that you are alive, you are growing, and you are capable of holding it all. You don't manifest by escaping your humanity. You manifest by embracing it, by letting your body be the temple, the transmitter, the alchemical vessel where energy becomes matter, where feeling becomes frequency, where fear becomes fuel, not from effort, from essence, from the still, unwavering presence within you that knows. Every wave eventually returns to shore. Every contraction gives birth to clarity, and every time you feel without freezing, you become more of who you already are. And now, here you are, on the other side of something you once thought might undo you. A fear you once braced against now lives inside your story, not as a shadow, but as a thread of light. Something changed. Not because the fear disappeared, but because you did something radical. You stayed. You let your body hold what it had once rejected. You softened in the places that used to clench. You breathed through the noise. And in doing so, you didn't just regulate your nervous system. You reclaimed your power. Because real power is quiet. It doesn't shout. It doesn't prove. It simply is. And it's born from this very thing. Your ability to stay rooted in truth, while everything inside you trembles with uncertainty. That's coherence. That's alignment. That's the new template. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, choose differently. Not out of reaction, but from resonance. Not because you're forcing the outcome, but because your inner state is already living the reality you desire. When you become a safe place for your own fear, you become magnetic. Not because you bypass discomfort, but because you've integrated it. You no longer emit the signal of avoidance. You emit presence, and presence bends timelines. It draws people, experiences, and synchronicities to you, not from strategy, but from soul. Because you're no longer sending mixed messages to the universe. You're no longer asking for expansion while vibrating with resistance. You've made space. You've cleared the static. You've become the clear channel, and that changes everything. You begin to notice things. The way your body speaks before your mind catches up. The way life begins to respond before you even speak the desire out loud. The way miracles move toward you when you're not even looking. Not because fear is gone, but because your relationship to it has matured. It's no longer your compass. It's your companion. You walk with it, not behind it. You feel it, but you don't follow it. It may whisper doubt, but your truth rings louder. Your vision pulses stronger. Your embodiment is deeper. This is what it means to manifest from identity. Not just doing different things, but being someone new. Someone whose nervous system says yes to what they once feared. Someone who can hold the bigness of their becoming without needing to run. Someone who knows that fear is just a wave, and they are the ocean. So let this be your remembering. The next time the fear rises, when your throat tightens, your palms sweat, your old stories come knocking, pause, place a hand on your heart, anchor into your breath, and whisper to yourself, "It's safe to feel this. I don't have to freeze." Then let the wave move. Let the body speak. Let the alchemy happen in real time. Because in those moments, you are not regressing, you are refining. Not falling apart, but falling into truth, into power, into alignment. You don't have to outrun fear to be free. You only have to stop resisting it, to meet it with love, with breath, with presence. And when you do, something incredible unfolds. You start to live in rhythm with the field, in coherence with your own becoming, in sacred intimacy with all that you are, including the parts that once trembled. Feel it. Don't freeze. That's the work. That's the portal. That's the signal of your next timeline becoming real. And the more you do it, the more you'll realize freedom was never the absence of fear. It was the fullness of your presence, even in the face of it.